What's up guys, Ben here bringing you another video today. I wanted to make a video and discuss the owner of a Wobble Bob's kind of Twitter thread about the finances of Call of Duty Challengers. I kind of want to do like a little bit of like fact or fiction about this, talk about the Challengers scene. I think kind of my perspective, which is it's very hard to like come up with a model in which Challengers teams are going to be rolling in cash, but I can kind of understand where the owner is coming from. So let's discuss what he put on Twitter. All right, so let's first go through and read all of the parts of the thread. So this is sort of like the top line P&L, especially the L side of the P, or the L side of the P&L. Total expenses for his team. Obviously, you see those are probably like flight, hotel, and other costs to fly to those events. Keeping in mind, by the way, I think for his team that they are an international team, so you're factoring international flights. Obviously, it also has player salaries as well. Pretty low overall across the board at 8.9K. So the guys are making probably like a couple $100 a month. So your total expenses throughout the season are 23,000, which I actually don't think are that bad. Actually, that's pretty economical for a Challengers team as far as like team pass costs, travel, like all that stuff. It seems pretty on board for what I would expect for going to 4 of the majors. So let's take a look at some of the winnings they had. So to the point from Awoba, they take 20% of the winnings post-tax from the players, which I actually think is pretty reasonable as far as things go on that front. So you see the money there. They didn't attend Texas, obviously, because they had a player issue, but they made a decent coin across the season, as well as from the elites, like 13K in prize pools. Pretty good, honestly, for this team. So taking a look at just those figures, only slight losses. We're only talking about like 10-15K losses so far, so that's not too bad. This seems kind of on point for what I would expect for a good team, by the way, because Wild Bobs have been like a top 4 top 5 team all last season. So yeah, so this is sort of the breakdown. Despite winning an elite, now placing outside the T3, winning a land event, now placing on T6, this is where you'd be at financially. A loss of about 10K. Again, for me, seems on brand, and we'll kind of get to more of that in a second. And this is kind of the last point of the thread. Basically, can't talk about buyouts, but they did obviously also. This is the part in this thread that I think is a little bit of an unknown. Didn't want to get into buyouts, but they definitely sold a couple of players to CDL teams this season, so they might have kind of made some money. So he said, if you're a top team winning events, you're looking around a 10K loss per season. I really want to be able to continue to support the players since ecosystem, but financially it makes no sense if you manage to sell 2 players to the league every season. Impossible. That is fair. We need support from the CDL, an alternative way to provide revenue source, more pro-ams, and plenty more that's fallen on deaf ears for too long. So let's dive in on what I think here. Sorry, headphone users, for the claps. Look, in general, teams in esports, I don't care if you're a Challengers team, if you're a pro team, like making money is just tough for everybody on the team side of the business right now. So totally feel that as far as Challengers go. I just think it's going to be very difficult to create a Challengers ecosystem where everybody is just rolling in cash. And I want to expand this further before we get along. Like the second tier of any sport, unless we're talking about like European football, has always had economic issues. Look at what's happening with minor league baseball right now and Major League Baseball stepping in, the contractual bargaining agreements going on in minor league baseball. Like that ecosystem has really struggled now for a minute. You see minor league hockey teams also really struggle. I mean, I can keep going about the G League, but my point is that the second tier of any one of these like franchise sports, especially North American sports, are always going to be very difficult to make businesses that are raking in cash. So I think where we then need to get to is how do we incentivize these challenger orgs to come in and be able to make like break even. And I think that's going to be really difficult. Now, Awoba's kind of thought process is let's get more pro-ams, which I agree. I don't think that's a real solve until probably the CDL is no more and we get the CWL back and we go back to more of a Halo model, because then you're probably good on that. That brings in more support for sponsorships. By the way, speaking of that, that's not mentioned anywhere in here. So I don't know if Wild Bobs didn't have any sponsors, but that would be some profit if you were getting any sponsors in. And a total loss of 10K, if you can get a sponsor for a couple $1,000s, you're pretty decently kind of close to break even there by a couple thousand. As far as like the CDL and Activision subsidizing Challengers teams, I just don't see why they would do it. What's the incentive? And I think I'm going to kind of get to a bigger point about it, which is like, especially for the challenger scene, like yeah, the travel support is really key for the teams to be able to support players traveling to open bracket events. But some people in the industry would say, and I think there's evidence of that, you know, back in the day, like the Halo days, like people paid their way to go to events for the aspirational goal to compete. Now, I think you would lose a lot of people if challenger orgs pull out en masse, but you know, I think you could make a reasonable argument, and I know some of you probably don't want to hear it, that we don't necessarily need challengers brands. We don't necessarily need challengers teams in order to have a really good challengers ecosystem. In general, for the ecosystem, like I think it's in a decent spot. If you look at it from like a long lens, we've got a lot of online cups, maybe too many to be honest. I really like the elite cycle, and they expanded it to a number of teams this season from like 8 to 12, which is a really good idea. Continuing that, and then we've got opens, and we had like 4 opens and then champs last year. Like that's pretty good. It was what, 5? I mean, it should have been 6, but obviously the New York event or whatever, it was 5 events in like 7 months is pretty good as far as, you know, opportunities for people to play on land. So I don't like, yes, the only thing I would probably add this ecosystem is more ability for challengers teams to play pro teams. I'm down for that. We just discussed earlier in the video why I think that's going to be difficult. I just think sort of where my kind of final thoughts are on this post. One, I do think this is a little gassed from Awoba, again, because he's not speaking to the buyouts portion, which is probably decent. There's no mention of sponsorship here. A couple thousand sponsorship bucks come in here and you're pretty close to break even. 10K loss is really not that bad when we talk about, you know, professional esports teams losing millions of dollars every quarter. So the scale here is not, I think, too bad as far as challenger stuff go. Second, I do think that in general, the challengers model will change long term and will benefit more teams once, I think, you know, franchise esports is kind of toast, like the clock's ticking on that. And I think especially in Call of Duty, once the Microsoft merger happens, I just feel like the CDL is going to transition to something else, and that will bring, you know, more potential upside to teams like Wobblebobs who can, you know, get teams that qualify in a bracket, maybe be able to get spots in whatever kind of league exists, be able to get sponsorships, sell players, all that stuff. So, and then I think my final point on this is just what I said earlier. I just think the kind of like fire take in all of this is that you don't necessarily need brands for challengers to work. You can just have 4 players make a brand and compete. As long as the economics allow them internally to be able to support their own costs via prize money, all that, like I think that can do a decent amount in challengers. Now, the only downside to that is once we get towards the middle of the end of the season, people need travel support and the orgs are not there. Someone's gonna have to step in. That might be Activision, it might be somebody else. So that's kind of my thoughts. I'd love to talk about this more with the Wobble. I'm gonna reach out to him probably and see if he wants to chat and maybe do like interview on this channel or on Twitch, and we can kind of talk more about challengers. But that's kind of my thoughts for now. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. I think the next video, there's a lot of rumors and we might be getting a like Miami Heretics kind of announcement today. So gonna be on the lookout for that. And if that comes into fruition, we'll talk about that in our video tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.